I'm a jail warden who survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion, and this is my story. Before I begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. It was 3:42 a.m. when it happened. I remember checking the wall clock in the security office as the first alarm triggered. Just another quiet night shift at Blackridge Correctional Facility, a medium-security prison housing 537 inmates on the outskirts of Millfield County. 20 years in corrections, the last 8 as head warden, and I thought I'd seen every kind of prison emergency possible. Nothing prepared me for the night when visitors from another world decided our facility would be their first point of contact. I'm Warden Victor Reyes, responsible for every soul inside these walls, both the incarcerated and my staff. I've handled riots, attempted breakouts, contraband operations, and even a hostage situation in cell block D 3 years ago. But all of that was just rehearsal for the morning when the sky opened up and everything we understood about our place in the universe changed forever. The first warning came through our perimeter sensors, designed to detect any approach to the exterior walls. Deputy Warden Torres was reviewing camera feeds when they all flickered simultaneously. "Must be another power fluctuation," she muttered, resetting the system. We'd been having electrical issues all week, brownouts and equipment malfunctions that maintenance couldn't explain. Third time tonight. I was updating the night log when the exterior floodlights suddenly intensified to an almost blinding level, then cut out completely, plunging the yard into darkness. "Emergency generators should kick in," I said, already reaching for the radio. Before I could call maintenance, the backup lights activated, but something was wrong. Instead of the standard white illumination, they glowed with an unnatural blue-green tint that cast eerie shadows across the yard. What the hell? Torres moved closer to the monitors, adjusting the contrast. "Is this a camera issue?" I was already heading for the door. "I'll check it myself. Alert the night shift to stand by for potential power failure protocols." The administrative building connected to cell block A via a short corridor with reinforced security doors at both ends. As I swiped my keycard at the first door, the electronic lock made an unusual sound, a high-pitched whine instead of the standard click. The display flashed error 3 times before reluctantly engaging. Officer Kaplan met me at the entrance to cell block A, his usual stoic expression replaced with evident concern. "Warden, the inmates are reporting strange lights outside their windows. Those on the east side say they can see something in the sky." "What kind of something?" I asked, already moving toward the east wing. "Honestly, sir, they're saying it's a spacecraft." Under normal circumstances, I'd have attributed such claims to prison boredom or contraband substances. But nothing about this night felt normal. The east wing was unusually quiet as I approached. Typically, even at this hour, there would be some ambient noise, snoring, muttered conversations, the background soundtrack of 120 men in confined spaces. Now there was only silence, broken by the occasional whisper as inmates stood at their cell windows, staring out into the night. I approached the security station at the end of the corridor, where a wall of reinforced windows provided a view of the eastern perimeter. Officer Ramirez stood transfixed, not even acknowledging my presence until I was directly beside him. "Warden," he said quietly, pointing toward the sky. "Tell me I'm hallucinating." The object hovering above the eastern perimeter wall defied conventional description. It was roughly disc-shaped, but with geometric protrusions that seemed to shift and reconfigure even as I watched. Its surface rippled with patterns of light that cycled through colors in complex sequences. Most disturbing was its deliberate positioning directly above our facility, too precise to be random, too controlled to be any known aircraft. My radio crackled. "Warden, this is Torres. We're getting reports of similar objects at the county courthouse and police headquarters. National Guard has been mobilized." "Have they made contact with it?" I asked, unable to take my eyes off the craft. "Negative. All attempts at communication have gone unanswered." "Wait, something's happening." As if responding to Torres's words, the craft began to descend slowly toward the exercise yard, stopping approximately 50 feet above the ground. A column of blue-green light extended from its underside, creating a perfect circle on the concrete below. My training kicked in, 20 years of crisis management overriding the shock and disbelief. Torres, initiate immediate lockdown. All inmates secure in cells. All staff to emergency positions. Contact County Emergency Management and request immediate assistance. Already trying, sir. All external communications are down. Cell networks, internet, even the landlines. This complicated matters significantly. Blackridge was designed to operate independently in case of emergencies, with backup generators, water reserves, and a 3-week food supply. But complete communications isolation wasn't something we'd prepared for. "Sir," Ramirez said, his voice tight, "there's someone in the yard." I looked back to the window. Within the circle of light, a figure had appeared, seemingly materialized from the beam itself. Not human, though humanoid in basic structure. It stood approximately 7 feet tall, with proportions just wrong enough to trigger an instinctive unease. Its skin, if it could be called that, had the same shifting iridescence as the craft above, and where a human would have facial features, it had only geometric patterns that rearranged themselves continuously. "My God," Ramirez whispered. "Keep it together, officer," I said, though my own heart was racing. "We need to establish containment protocols." "Containment?" he asked incredulously. "That's an alien, sir. A actual extraterrestrial being. How do we contain that?" A fair question without an obvious answer. As I watched, the entity began to move across the yard with a fluid grace that suggested a different relationship with gravity than our own. It approached the main entrance to Cell Block B, examining the security door with what appeared to be curiosity. My radio crackled again. "Warden, more of them are appearing," Torres reported. "North, south, and west perimeters all report similar craft. They're surrounding the facility." The situation was escalating beyond anything in our emergency protocols. I made a quick decision, based more on instinct than procedure. "Torres, maintain lockdown, but do not engage the entities unless they attempt to breach occupied areas. I'm heading to the command center." The Central Command Center was located beneath the administrative building, designed as a secure location from which to coordinate emergency responses. By the time I arrived, Torres had assembled our crisis team, a group of senior officers and technical staff who looked as shocked and disoriented as I felt. "Status report," I demanded, forcing calm into my voice. "4 alien craft positioned at cardinal points around the facility," Torres began, pulling up the security feed on the main display. "They've deployed approximately 20 entities that are currently exploring the perimeter. No aggressive actions observed yet, but they're methodically examining all entry points." "Internal systems?" Technical Officer Whitaker spoke up. "Internal power now running on backup generators. But something's affecting all electronic systems. Cameras are functioning, but with interference. Security doors are experiencing intermittent failures. The automated systems for climate control and water management are behaving erratically. The inmates, surprisingly calm for now," reported Block Supervisor Chun, "mostly watching from their cells. A few religious types are praying. Some are convinced it's a government experiment. Others think it's the apocalypse. No panic yet, but that could change quickly." I processed this information, trying to apply crisis management principles to a situation that existed entirely outside our operational framework. Our priority is maintaining secure containment of all inmates while ensuring staff safety. Until we know the visitor's intentions, we treat this as a potential hostage situation. No aggressive postures, no threatening actions, but maintain full security protocols. As we organized response teams, Officer Kaplan burst into the command center. "Sir, they've breached Cell Block C's exterior door. They just walk through it. The metal just seemed to ripple around them. Our most secure doors, designed to withstand explosions and high-caliber rounds, apparently offered no resistance to alien physiology. This changed the equation dramatically. Are they accessing the cell areas?" I asked. "No, sir. They're in the administrative section. Seems like they're examining our computer systems and file storage. Information gathering. That suggested intelligence, purpose, not random exploration. I made another decision, again without precedent to guide me. I need to establish contact. They're here for a reason, and we need to understand what that is before this situation deteriorates. Torres objected immediately. With all due respect, Warden, that's insane. We have no idea what these beings are capable of or what they want. Precisely why we need communication, I countered. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. They've demonstrated the ability to bypass our security. The fact that they're examining our systems rather than attacking suggests they're gathering information. Or looking for weaknesses before they strike, she argued. Possibly, but we're running out of options. If communications remain down and they continue to penetrate our facility, we'll eventually face direct contact anyway, better on our terms than theirs. After brief but intense discussion, the crisis team reluctantly agreed. I would attempt contact with the entities in Cell Block C, accompanied by Torres and Whitaker, while the rest of the team maintained control of the command center. We equipped ourselves with basic communication tools, clipboards with paper, assuming electronic devices might be compromised, and body cameras, though Whitaker doubted they would function normally in the aliens' presence. No weapons. If these beings could walk through reinforced steel, firearms would be pointless at best, provocative at worst. As we approached Cell Block C, the air itself seemed to change, becoming charged with an energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. The lighting continued to shift between normal illumination and that strange blue-green tint, creating a disorienting effect. The entities were exactly where Kaplan had reported. 3 of them clustered around the block central control station, where inmate records and facility systems were accessed. They moved with that same unsettling grace, appendages that weren't quite arms manipulating interfaces that weren't designed for non-human use. I stepped forward, hands visibly empty, Torres and Whitaker flanking me at a slight distance. I am Warden Victor Reyes, the administrator of this facility. We wish to establish peaceful communication. The entities paused their activities, geometric patterns on their faces, reconfiguring rapidly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one stepped forward, its iridescent surface rippling with increased intensity. A sound emerged, not from the entity itself, but seemingly from the air around us. A complex overlapping of tones that resonated in my chest before resolving into recognizable speech. Classification facility. Containment protocols. Human categorization system observed. The voice was synthetic, emotionless, clearly not the entity's natural communication, but some kind of translation technology. More disturbing was the implication that they understood our facility's purpose. Yes, I confirmed. This is a correctional facility. We maintain custody of individuals who have violated our society's laws. The entities conferred, patterns shifting between them in what might have been their version of conversation. The spokesperson turned back to me. Efficiency assessment of containment protocols required. Hierarchy of human control structures under observation. This facility prioritized for evaluation. A cold realization settled over me. They hadn't chosen our prison randomly. They were specifically interested in how we contained and controlled other humans. Of all the possible first contacts, they had prioritized understanding our mechanisms of confinement. May I ask why you're interested in our containment systems? I ventured. Preparation for optimal human management processing, came the reply, as if this explained everything. Torres tensed beside me, and I subtly signaled her to remain calm. The implications were disturbing, but maintaining dialogue was crucial. What is the purpose of human management processing? I asked carefully. Integration of viable human population units into revised planetary ecosystem. Non-viable units require containment or repurposing. The clinical detachment of the statement made it all the more chilling. These visitors weren't here for cultural exchange or diplomatic relations. They were assessing how best to sort and manage humans in whatever system they planned to implement. Before I could formulate a response, alarm blared throughout the facility, the lockdown siren activated by someone in the command center. The entities reacted immediately, their forms becoming more rigid, patterns accelerating across their surfaces. Security alert detected. Resistance protocols initiated by human control hierarchy. Classified as non-cooperation. No, I said quickly, that's an automatic system. Not resistance. We're continuing cooperation. But something had shifted in their demeanor, if such a human concept could apply to these beings. They moved with new purpose, no longer examining, but accessing the control systems directly. The central console screens flickered rapidly as data streamed across them at impossible speeds. Return to your command center. The entity directed. Assessment will continue. Interference will result in reclassification of this facility status. It was a dismissal, and arguing seemed unwise. We retreated, making our way back to the command center where we found the rest of the crisis team in a state of controlled panic. The Northern craft is scanning the entire facility, reported Security Chief Mendoza. They're mapping everything, structural details, electrical systems, water pipes, air ducts, everything. Who activated the alarm? I demanded. It triggered automatically, Whitaker explained. The entity's interaction with the Block C systems caused a security protocol violation. I tried to override it, but the system wouldn't respond. I shared what we'd learned from our brief communication, the team's expressions growing more concerned with each detail. They're treating us like a test case, Torres summarized. Learning how we contain people so they can apply it on a larger scale. Which means they might see value in keeping our containment systems and protocols intact, I noted. Possibly including those of us who operate them. The implication hung in the air. Were we being evaluated not just as a facility, but as potential collaborators in whatever human management processing entailed? Around 5:30 a.m., approximately 2 hours into the encounter, the entity's behavior changed. They began systematically accessing each cell block, not entering the inmate areas, but interfacing with the security systems controlling them. Cell doors throughout the facility began opening and closing in patterns that made no obvious sense to us, but clearly served some purpose for the visitors. They're testing control mechanisms, Whitaker suggested, seeing how our security systems can be manipulated. More concerning was the effect on the inmates. The unexplained cell operations, coming after hours of witnessing alien craft through their windows, was pushing an already tense situation toward potential chaos. Reports from officers stationed in the blocks indicated growing agitation, inmates shouting questions or threats, some attempting to barricade their cells, others seeing opportunity in the malfunctioning doors. We're going to have a riot if this continues, Torres warned. Human panic in confined spaces is a powder keg. She was right, and it presented a dangerous complication. If the aliens were indeed studying our containment protocols, a full-scale riot would demonstrate failure of those protocols, potentially resulting in more direct intervention on their part. We need to address the inmate population directly, I decided. Provide enough information to prevent panic without revealing the full situation. Using the internal announcement system, I broadcast a brief message to all blocks. Attention all inmates. The facility is experiencing a technical evaluation by external authorities. All security protocols remain in effect. Cooperation will result in minimal disruption to facility operations. Resistance or disruptive behavior will trigger enhanced containment measures. It was deliberately vague, using language that would be familiar to institutional residents, without revealing the extraterrestrial nature of our visitors. Whether it would be sufficient remained to be seen. By 6:15 a.m., the entities had established what appeared to be a central operation point in the facility's main control room, interfaces connecting directly to our security systems. More disturbing, they had begun removing certain inmates from their cells for what officers reported as scanning procedures. The selected inmates were not physically harmed, but returned to their cells in states of profound shock, unable or unwilling to describe what had happened. Their sampling, suggested Dr. Keller, our chief medical officer who had joined the crisis team, taking representative subjects from different demographic groups for detailed assessment. Can you evaluate those who've been returned? I asked. I've tried. Physically, they appear unharmed, but they're exhibiting signs of severe psychological trauma. 1,000-yard stares, dissociative behaviors, selective mutism. Whatever happened during those scans was beyond their capacity to process. At 7 a.m., as the first gray light of dawn became visible through the command center's narrow windows, we received our first communication from outside the facility. A National Guard commander had managed to approach the perimeter and was requesting contact with prison administration. I dispatched Torres to meet him at the outer checkpoint, one of the few areas not yet penetrated by the entities. She returned 30 minutes later with troubling news. The visitors have established control points at strategic locations throughout the county. Military installations, communication centers, power plants, water treatment facilities. Reports are coming in of similar craft appearing worldwide, all following the same pattern of targeting infrastructure and containment systems. Containment systems? I questioned. What else besides prisons? Detention centers, psychiatric facilities, even refugee camps. Anywhere humans are contained and managed in groups. The pattern was becoming clearer and more disturbing. This wasn't random. It was methodical assessment of how humans already controlled and categorized each other. What's the military response? I asked. Limited and ineffective. Conventional weapons have no impact on the craft or the entities. They're falling back, creating a perimeter around affected areas, but taking no offensive action while they assess the situation. Smart, I noted. Establishing a boundary without triggering escalation. There's more, Torres added. The National Guard commander passed on a message specifically for you. Government analysts have been monitoring all contact attempts with the visitors. Your communication was one of the few that received direct response. They're requesting you attempt further dialogue, try to establish clearer understanding of intentions and capabilities. I wasn't surprised. In a global first contact scenario, government officials would be desperate for any information, any point of connection with the unknown visitors. That our prison facility had become an impromptu diplomatic channel was both absurd and strangely logical, given the entity's apparent interest in human containment systems. By 8 a.m., 4.5 hours into the encounter, the facility had settled into an uneasy new routine. The entities continued their systematic assessment of our systems and selected inmates, while my staff maintained basic operations and monitored for potential unrest. The initial shock had given way to a surreal acceptance of our situation, each person coping in their own way with the reality that everything they understood about the world had fundamentally changed. I prepared for another attempt at communication, this time with specific questions provided by government analysts, transmitted through the National Guard. As I reviewed these questions, an alert came from cell block. Inmates in the eastern section were reporting strange effects, a vibration or frequency that was causing physical discomfort, headaches, nausea, disorientation. Dr. Keller and I headed to the affected area immediately. As we approached, I could feel it myself, a subtle vibration that seemed to resonate inside my skull rather than through the air. The sensation intensified as we reached the eastern cells, where inmates were pressing hands against their ears, some curled on their beds in obvious distress. Some kind of acoustic or electromagnetic effect, Keller suggested, grimacing as she checked an inmate who appeared particularly affected. But I've never seen anything that could penetrate reinforced concrete walls so effectively. I made a quick decision. Evacuate this section. Move the inmates to the western block temporarily. That violates segregation protocols, Officer Ramirez pointed out. We have rival gang members separated for a reason. I'm aware. Station additional officers and make it clear that any conflicts will result in immediate isolation. We can't leave them exposed to whatever this is. As the evacuation began, I noticed the vibration was increasing in intensity. By the time we'd moved half the affected inmates, the sensation had become nearly debilitating, pressure building inside my head until speech and coordination became difficult. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence felt almost as physical as the vibration had been, a palpable absence that left everyone momentarily frozen. "What just happened?" Keller asked, steadying herself against the wall. Before I could respond, the facility-wide announcement system activated, but instead of a human voice, it broadcast the same synthetic tones we'd heard from the entity in Cell Block C. Preliminary assessment complete. This containment facility meets baseline efficiency requirements. Indigenous control protocols will be integrated with revised management systems. Designated authority units will be preserved for operational continuity. Torres's voice came through on my radio. "Warden, they've accessed every system in the facility. They're downloading the entire inmate database, all personnel records, behavioral management protocols, everything." The announcement continued. Phase 2 assessment initiating. Indigenous authority hierarchy will demonstrate containment response to controlled system disruption. As the message ended, every cell door in the facility opened simultaneously. Every security barrier between cell blocks deactivated. Every restricted area became accessible. They were testing us, creating a crisis to observe our response. How would we maintain control when our physical systems failed? I triggered the crisis response protocol immediately. All officers implement emergency containment procedures. Non-essential personnel fall back to secure areas. Medical team prepare for potential casualties. To the inmates, I made another announcement. "Attention, all residents. We are experiencing a comprehensive system test. All inmates are ordered to remain in their assigned areas. Those who demonstrate compliance will receive favorable consideration when normal operations resume. Those who attempt to exploit this test will face maximum response measures." It was a gamble, appealing to the pragmatic self-interest that governed most inmate behavior. Many, perhaps most, would recognize that a temporary malfunction didn't change the fundamental reality of their situation. Guards still outnumbered them. Escape would be difficult even with doors open. And eventually, systems would be restored, with severe consequences for those who had created problems. The next 2 hours were the most challenging of my career. Without electronic barriers, we maintained control through human presence, strategic positioning of officers at critical junctions, psychological authority, and the complex social contracts that existed within the inmate population itself. Leaders of various groups helped maintain order within their factions, recognizing that chaos served no one's interests in this unprecedented situation. There were incidents, of course. 3 attempted assaults between rival gang members, quickly contained by officer intervention. One group of 5 inmates tried to reach the perimeter, only to be intercepted not by our officers, but by the entities themselves, who simply returned them to their block. Most disturbing were the 7 inmates who voluntarily approached the entities, offering cooperation or service, apparently believing the visitors represented some kind of liberation or opportunity. Those 7 didn't return. Throughout this test, the entities observed from strategic points throughout the facility, their iridescent forms now familiar, but no less unsettling. They recorded everything, patterns shifting across their surfaces as they communicated with each other in ways we couldn't comprehend. By 11 a.m., 7.5 hours into the encounter, they had apparently seen enough. Cell doors began closing again, security systems reactivating, the facility returning to its normal operational state, though still under alien control. The announcement system activated once more. Containment response assessment complete. Indigenous methods partially effective. Integration with advanced protocols will proceed. Designation, Preservation Category Facility. I was summoned to the main control room, where 3 entities waited with what appeared to be some kind of data projection hovering between them, complex patterns and symbols shifting in 3-dimensional space. Facility Administrator Victor Reyes. The synthetic voice acknowledged as I entered. Your containment methodologies have been evaluated as adequate for transitional implementation. This facility will be preserved as a control model. Transitional implementation of what exactly? I asked, seizing the opportunity for direct questions. Revised human management systems. Your species requires restructuring for sustainability and optimal function. Existing containment hierarchies provide useful framework for implementation. You're planning to contain all of humanity, I stated, the full implication becoming clear. Using our own prisons as models. Correction. Selective containment of non-compliant human population segments. Compliant segments will be granted conditional autonomy within designated zones. Your facility demonstrates effective integration of both approaches. The cold, systematic nature of their plan sent chills through me despite the clinical language. They were planning to sort humanity into compliant and non-compliant categories, using our own institutional models to control those who resisted whatever changes they intended to implement. And what role do you see for people like me and my staff in this system? I asked carefully. Indigenous authority units with demonstrated efficiency will maintain operational responsibilities during transition phase. Your designation, Preserved Administrator, Regional Containment Zone 37. They were offering me a position in their new order, maintaining my role as warden, but on a much larger scale, and presumably under their ultimate authority. The same presumably applied to my staff, preserved in their functions as part of the existing containment hierarchy they found so useful. What happens to those who don't accept these designations? I had to ask, though I suspected the answer. Reclassification as non-compliant units. Containment or repurposing as resource requirements dictate. Collaborate or be contained. The choice was as simple as it was impossible. I'll need to consult with my team, I said, playing for time. Consultation period authorized, 1 hour. Facility command transfer protocols will commence at local time 12:42. 9 hours exactly from when they had first appeared. The precision was somehow more threatening than any overt display of power could have been. I gathered the senior staff in the command center, sharing what I'd learned. The reactions ranged from shock to calculated consideration of options. They're offering us positions as collaborators, Torres summarized bluntly. Help them control other humans or be controlled ourselves. The ethical implications are impossible, said Keller. But so are the alternatives. Resistance appears futile against their technology. Maybe it's pragmatic, suggested Mendoza. Work within their system, maintain some human authority. Look for opportunities to protect people or potentially undermine from within. The debate continued, moral principles colliding with survival instincts, professional duty conflicting with broader human loyalty. Through it all, I listened, weighing options that all seemed equally unacceptable. At 12:15 p.m., with our consultation period nearing its end, an alert came from the perimeter. Something was happening with the alien craft positioned above the eastern yard. Security feeds showed the disc-shaped vessel pulsing with increased intensity, patterns of light accelerating across its surface. Below it, the entities who had been examining our facility were returning to the beam of light that had first delivered them, ascending back to their craft. Similar reports came in from the other positions around the facility. The visitors were withdrawing, their meticulous examination apparently complete. At 12:30 p.m., with all entities now returned to their vessels, the craft began to rise slowly, maintaining their perfect formation as they ascended. By 12:42 p.m., exactly 9 hours after their arrival, they had vanished, leaving no trace of their presence except the violated systems of our facility and the psychological impact on everyone who had witnessed them. Communications were restored almost immediately, our phones and internet connections reactivating, as if they had never been disrupted. Reports flooded in from across the region, across the country, across the world. The pattern was identical everywhere. Precise 9-hour examinations of containment facilities and infrastructure, followed by synchronized withdrawal. No explanation, no formal communication, just methodical assessment and departure. By 3:42 p.m., 12 hours after the first craft had appeared above Black Ridge Correctional Facility, we had restored normal operations. Inmates were secured in their proper cells, staff had resumed their regular duties, and the facility systems were functioning normally. Though Whitaker reported unusual modifications to our database structure and security protocols that would require extensive analysis. I stood in the eastern yard, looking up at the empty sky where the craft had hovered, trying to make sense of what had happened. They had come, they had studied our methods of controlling each other, and they had left, taking with them comprehensive data on our containment systems and, presumably, similar information from facilities worldwide. The National Guard commander returned, seeking a detailed account of everything I had observed and learned. Government officials would be arriving soon, he informed me, to establish a permanent investigative presence at our facility, given its apparent significance to the visitors. Do they think the aliens will return? I asked him. All indications suggest this was reconnaissance, not a complete operation, he replied grimly. They came to gather information, not to implement whatever plans they have. The working theory is that they'll be back, better prepared for full implementation of whatever revised human management system they mentioned to you. The implication was clear. We had survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion, but it was merely the opening phase of something larger. They now possessed detailed understanding of how we contained and controlled each other, knowledge they would presumably apply when they returned. As for me, I had been designated Preserved Administrator, Regional Containment Zone 37, in their plan system. The title echoed in my mind as I returned to my office to write an incident report unlike any in corrections history. Whatever they intended, whatever came next, I had been marked for a specific role in humanity's future. Whether that represented opportunity or compromise was a question I would have to answer before they returned. I am Warden Victor Reyes, and I survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion. But the true test, for me and for all of humanity, still lies ahead.